Should we just start? We're recording now. Yay! Okay, so welcome to this showcase event for the School of Arts Virtual Showcase. I have here with me Hope Fitzgerald, who is a self-employed creative, to put it as a very simple label. But we're gonna have some of her wisdom passed on to us, so I'll pass on to you, Hope.
Thank you very much, Edie. Hello, Laura. Thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to talk to you about work. As a self-employed slashie career person, there isn't a huge opportunity to do this kind of thing. Really, you kind of have to make the opportunities happen. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's also really nice to look into work and remind myself and reflect on what I've done over a number of years. And again, that's good in any career, but I think it's particularly important if you're working by yourself a lot of the time. So making those kinds of opportunities happen is really important. And it also reminded me, last thing before I start screen sharing, it reminded me of something I read when I was studying for my MA, which was about the Akkadian concept of time. And their concept of time was written about by someone called Stefan Moll. I'm just looking at my notes because I can't remember the title. It's one of those really long titles. It's called The Conception of Time in the Ancient Near East. So our conception of time, I'm going to mute my phone. Our conception of time is that we are firmly facing forward and we look into the future. And the Akkadian conception of time is that you look into the past and you're walking backwards into the future, which makes more sense because in a way you don't know what the future looks like. So it's really nice to be looking backwards. You know what? I just got reminded of this thing. That's what that notice was. So apologies for that. I'm just going to turn the volume right down. So yeah, that conception of time has always sort of stuck with me. So it's really nice to look back at work. Very appropriate to be looking back. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and in the true multitasking style of the, oh, that's the wrong one. Wait a minute. How do I go back? Oh, right, here we go. I'm using a previous PowerPoint that I used a couple of years ago when I was working in a school, but none of the work in front of me in the past has changed, so it's appropriate. I'm very interested in documenting, which doesn't quite fit, I realized today, with what I'm doing now, although maybe there's some way for me to consider that and to fit it in. So it's recording something, written, photographic, other form, which you're doing today, you're documenting this, something that's used to furnish evidence or information. So obviously there are practical applications to that, but there are also, for me, artistic implications. One of the first things that I did when I was studying for my MA, because I was freaking out about what I was supposed to do and what I could do and what I was allowed to do, and everybody had done everything before me, is that I made myself an artistic license, which basically gave me permission to do whatever the hell I wanted. And it was a bit of a joke, but it was very freeing and well received within my cohort. So that was a nice thing. The next piece of work I wanted to tell you about was something called A Mile More or Less. And this was a series of books that were commissioned for the Fine Art Museum in Valletta in Malta. And it's a really, really traditional type of museum. So these books were placed around the space to interrupt the space. So they was maybe suspended, or they were, in between sculptures, or, round paintings, however they were, but interrupting the space. And the concept of it came from Marcel Duchamp's piece of work, which was called A Mile of String, in which he did something similar. Well, he did something similar. He did the thing, and then we kind of copied it. And he put a mile of string around a gallery so that people had to go in and crawl around the string and, get through to, he was just trying to sort of interrupt the space. we also hired young children to play games around the gallery, so really interrupting that space. So this was an homage to that. And my piece of work is actually a mile drawn in 1-inch lines. So it's a mile more or less because it's 68,360 lines, maybe. I might have lost count. I made this when my children were very young. And for me, it has a feminist feel to it because women often juggle many things and have to fit their work in around other commitments. And not every woman does that, but historically, that's how it worked, and it worked that way for me. So these lines were drawn, in between glasses of milk. So I would draw sort of 10, and then somebody would ask me for something, and then I would draw another 100, and somebody would ask me for something, and then, so I could keep track of what I was doing, and yet the cumulative effect of it was that this piece of work was made. So it is a book. This is every pencil shaving that came off the pencils I kept. So every part of the piece of work is still somewhere. So either the scraping off the tip of the pencil that went onto the paper is on the paper, and the rest of the pencil is there, and all the shavings. Because I really also like this Duchampian idea that, is it Duchamp? No, it's Sol LeWitt, whose idea is that every part of a piece of work matters and is part of the work. And I think that's a really valuable thing as well. Again, it has this sort of feminist sensibility because there are parts that are unseen and kind of unappreciated, which I really liked. So I kept all of that stuff. It's probably in the attic somewhere in a tiny box. I made a box for the book, and why does it keep moving around? Sorry about that. The small line on the left is again a reference to Duchamp, because he did another piece of work called 3 Standard Stoppages, and he was playing with the idea that a meter is a meter. So we know, in the old days it was from your nose to the end of your fingers or whatever. So he took 3 pieces of string that were I don't know if they were a meter or a yard, but anyway, they were a fixed length, and he dropped them and he made that the measurement. So that is really interesting, that you can take the same piece of string. When people say, oh, how long is a piece of string? It's like, well, depends on how it drops to the ground, I guess. So that's why I did that. The next piece of work, I feel like I'm talking really fast because I want to make sure I'm not taking too long to tell you these things. The next piece of work is also book related. For my final piece for my master's, I made this piece, which is called a bivariate map, and it was the King James Old Testament pasted onto the wall. And then I used a Bible concordance, which is was an online tool where you can put any word that you want to find into a search engine, and it will find you all the instances of that word in the Bible. So I chose phrases from The Origin of Species, from On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, and or Chuck D, as I like to call him. We once had a birthday cake for him at home, much to my children's surprise. And so looked up all these words, but what was really, really interesting and what kind of grabbed me and generated the piece was that there were words, because obviously they weren't in use in the King James era, that just didn't appear. And there were things like animals, which, I always associate animals with the Bible, maybe just because of the Noah story, but it just wasn't used. And grandeur was another one that I found particularly interesting, because you kind of think, gosh, pretty much it's all about grandeur, and it's not in there. So I didn't look any further into the language usage, but I found that really interesting. So the words that I could find, I mapped onto the Bible pages, and it had a really lovely performative effect. When I was making it, it took a long time because I had to paste every page on. I had 2 Bibles because I had to have front and back, and the pages had to run. And then every word had to be found on the page. So there was a lot of, going to the reference, which I'm showing here, and then going to find it in the Bible and then going back. And it really reminded me of where I met my husband in Israel. And it reminded me of the Wailing Wall and this thing of approaching with a word. And it was just such a lovely process. And because I was in that space for such a long time, people would come in. It had a really communal kind of feel to it, which was lovely. I really enjoyed making the work. I'd love to make it again. It was 28 feet long and 8 feet high, I think, 7 feet. There it is in scale. So every circle represents a word that was found in the concordance. And then the lines joining them together in the way of any making, you start making something and the creative process brings up something else. And I never intended it to happen, but it kind of looks like a thicket, which again refers to Darwin's words about the entangled bank. So that was lovely. And I also happened to be wearing a floral print, which again, totally unintended. There I am, diligently painting for a press opportunity for my university. And you can just spot the child's vegetable plate holding my paint right down by my shoulder. But we'll move on. And my hair doesn't look like that on the back because I've been cutting it myself for a year. Hello, pandemic. This piece I called it a contingent piece, and it's all the planning. So that sat next to the wall piece, which was only existed for a week, and then it was taken off. So this piece is the only thing that exists of it. And again, I really liked the temporality of that, the idea that the work is like a piece of music or like a performance, and it's there, and if you missed it, you won't ever have the experience of it as people did when it was there. But this is in our living room, and I think I need to fix it. Something's falling down. Anyway, this is what it looked like in the gallery space. And I felt very cheeky as a student saying, I want that wall, please, that whole wall. And I don't know what I want to do on it. And actually I started, you can see, by drawing on it. And then because I'm very frugal and I can't stand wasting stuff, and it sounds ridiculous because paint isn't wasting stuff, but I kind of went, oh no, this wall is too big. I'm using up too much paint. I'm going to do something else. So I ended up doing the Bible thing over the drawing. And I don't know, I can't remember when it changed into the finished piece, but there it was. The next piece that I worked on was something called medium memory, which again, I had this habit of making a note of my ideas on my phone. So, I'd be like wandering around, like a little spaced out. And of course, one of my girls found it, and it's become a family joke to say medium memory. So, and then I ended up using it as a title for a piece. So the idea is that the piece is made up, the medium of the work is people's memories. So I made postcards of photographs that I had taken, 25 or 30 years ago. And that was right at the beginning of Instagram as well, when I first started with Instagram. And I knew that I had taken the pictures. There is a film of it on YouTube, actually, which I can, point you to with a link later on if you want to. I knew I had taken the pictures, but I didn't have memories attached to them because I have a bad memory. So what I did was I put the postcards on the wall. I don't know whether I have an image of that. Oh, that is the video, but you don't want to watch that. Put the images on the wall, and then I asked people to share a memory that was triggered by the image or any of the images. It was 16 by 9. So I don't know, do the math. I think that's 144 maybe. But anyway, I quite like this, the filmic 16 by 9 shape of it. So people would look at the image, and then there was a sort of filofax of other matching cards, and you would find the image, write your memory on it, And it was really beautiful and, you know, very generous. People were amazing. And I think there was something about the anonymity of it that meant people were really, really honest. You know, there were some amazing contributions, and I still have them. And they're on a, this shows how old it is. They're on a Tumblr, like, so it's not a, there's no fixie bikes involved, but it's on a Tumblr. So you can see every single one of the responses and the images, which is, it's a nice little record of it. And that is the video, but I don't think we want to play that. So I can always share it later. The next piece I did was something called Walkswell Medway. So, and it reminds me of something that's just happened the other day. So I decided every day to go for a walk I thought, well, if I go for a walk for 2 weeks, I'll, you know, buy myself some trainers. That'll be my reward. And then it turned out I walked for a whole year every single day. And while I was walking, I was trying to figure out how to get, and again, in the way of self-employed artists, you're always trying to figure out, well, like, how does this thing that I'm doing fit into that pot of funding? And can I get the funding for this if I do it this way? And so anyway, there was some funding going. And I managed to get some Arts Council funding for this project, which was Walkswell Medway. And what I did was I just walked and I stayed with people along the way. I just sort of solicited myself for sleeping over, which didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. And I stayed with people randomly, so I didn't know who they were. Sometimes friends of friends, but sometimes really just unknown people. And then I took photographs and shared that journey. And there was a website and, you know, various people. So all of these sections were parts of the walk. But that all came from just one decision of going for a walk. And coincidentally, I just will tell you a little aside, one of the men that was on my master's course, I haven't been in touch with him for ages. And somehow I kind of spotted him on Facebook. And he sent me a message yesterday to say, thank you very much for asking me to put pieces of work up, you know, for 10 days. He's since had half a dozen commissions and has stopped his other work and is now painting full time. So that you never know which little thing is going to have an impact. And I think that's just amazing, especially about creative work. I mean, I'm super psyched for him. I'm also a tiny bit jealous. Like, I'm waiting for something like that to happen. So Walkswell Medway, the reason I've said all of that about one thing leading to another. So Walkswell Medway came out of walking, and then it turned into 3 separate exhibitions, which is fabulous. So might be 4, because I think this was another one. So that was an amalgam of some of the images. This was at the University of Kent, and that was in conjunction with a musical performance. And this one was in one of the rural locations that I stayed in and walked in. And that this is all in a hide that's, you know, a million miles away. So people have to walk to it. And again, it's there and then it's gone. So that's a really nice thing. And then this was another iteration of it. So that's a nice thing. Alongside all of this, talking about the slashie career, I was also doing photography and video. So my video work is for a wide variety of people. You know, you can see there's live performance in pubs, Wigmore Hall. What is this one? I can't remember what that one is. I think it might be the Royal Opera House I did some work for. And then Kent County Council and various things attached to the Olympics, which is a while ago now. Last piece is, I think, which leads on to the bookbinding. So this was, I made a commitment to make a painting a day for 100 days, and I did it. And that was very exciting. So that became 100 color mix days, and it had this in my true like wacky connections brain style. I had 2 different books. One of the books generated the colors, which I mixed each color individually every day. And the other book was a book on ornithology. So I made this pseudo-scientific table for how to make the marks and how many shapes were on it. And anyway, it generated this stuff, and I made books, which you can just see down here. And it was before I started bookbinding. And now when I look at them, I'm absolutely horrified because, eesh. And I did apologize to all the bookbinders in the world before I did it. But anyway, I would do it differently now. But that it's good. It's good to, as Bob Ross says, no such thing as mistakes, just happy little accidents. So these are some of the paintings that came out of that piece. And then we get to bookbinding, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm kind of thinking of it as my old lady retirement plan. As long as my hands hold up, I just will make books and teach books because, oh, coincidentally, I also got a teaching qualification, so I can teach stuff, which is useful. And that's, I think I'm going to stop because I think I've done enough talking. Oh, and then in 2 weeks, last thing, I'm going to be at Wealden Literary Festival. So I was artist in residence in 2019 for them, and I'm going back this year with the marquee, like all these other people, and all of my gubbins, all the stuff I've made, and also to run a class. So I am looking forward to that, or I'm backing into it. I'm backing into it in the future, and I hope it will be a success. But in any case, I'm just glad it's going ahead, and I'm looking forward to being there. So that's it. I'm going to stop talking now. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was a good introduction. Well, like good explanation.
That was a good use of all of our time.
No, we've still got a while. No, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions if that's okay, just
Please
about
do.
being a self-employed person, working in your own time. So I feel like one thing that we talked about when we were like organizing this was about the importance of like diversifying your skill set. And so I just wanted to ask, like, how do you think that if you were giving someone advice who wanted to, you know, be a self-employed person and be creative and be doing what they love doing, what would be, like you said, you did a teaching course, so like what would be your advice on how to diversify your skill set? What would be some good advice for like how to get going on that?
Well, I don't know what my advice would be because I think it's probably different for everyone, but I knew that I wanted to, I don't know if this answers it exactly, but I knew that I knew that I was in a situation where I was heading a family, and I knew that I had my training as a photographer, which I kind of left that stuff out. But for my focus when I did my fine art degree was photography, and art history and some painting. So when the children were very young, I was doing a really terrible job, like a bad job. That's one thing, actually. If you're creative, just be prepared to do some crappy jobs. And I was walking around with somebody in a pushchair and somebody else toddling alongside. And I had at least 4 cameras at home doing nothing. So I started using those skills. I think it's really just having a little bit of confidence to have the wherewithal to say, right, where can I apply these skills? I don't know if it would be harder or easier now, because in a way you've got an online, you know, you've got that ability, but there are also so many people that you can get lost. So what I did was I just used my existing network, which was basically the NCT, the National Childbirth Trust. Like, I hung out with all the people with kids, and I started by taking photographs of children at home. And that just fit with my life. I didn't want to work during the week. And I would offered that service for a very low rate, I have to be honest. And I only worked on the weekend. And people would say, oh, is it okay on Saturday and Sunday? It's like, yes, please. It's ideal, because then my children can be with their dad, so that worked out well. And that was good because it generated, some income, which is useful. But after a while, it did it got a bit samey, and I always wanted to study more. So I think that would be the thing. If you, after your first degree, if you don't do a postgraduate, and I don't know if people make choices, but I think it's a good thing to decide to really know what you want to do if you're going to do postgraduate. And I knew that I wanted to be back in an artistic community. And I don't think it wasn't really for the qualification. It was more to be in that environment and to be with those people. So if you don't have access to that, to the education as a route into it, maybe the idea would be find out where the people are that are doing what you want to be doing, and try to get in there. But I studied, and that was the route in, and the route into work as well, because when I finished my master's, I went and did my master's in fine art, and because of the facilities, which again, I left all this out, because of the facilities, I thought, well, I'll just teach myself to edit while I'm there because they've got the stuff. So I started teaching myself to edit, and then that became my work. And that's been over the past sort of 10 years, I'd say that's more of the bulk of my income was actually film making and film editing. So I didn't go and study that. But I did work on a moving image course. So I did that for 3 years, and I probably took more notes than the students because I was really, really interested in it. And I learned a ton through teaching, and I got the teaching qualification at the same time because that was required. So anything you can double up, to just keep learning and just keep saying yes, say yes to stuff and figure it out later,
No, yeah, thank you. That's a good answer. I think there's definitely, as like someone who's like finishing a creative degree now, I think like often one of the things I think is the most scary is being able to be like, this is my work and I think it's good and I'm presenting it, or like I'm going to work on this project. So I was just thinking about how, like you said, the more that you can like bulk up your multiple skills, maybe the more like confident you're feeling in yourself and being like, oh yeah, I'm actually whatever I am, like, and I also wanted to say, obviously, like you've said, with having like a / job where you're like / how do you have any, I'm going to phrase it as advice, but really just take it and go with it. When you're trying to market yourself as a person to be hired, how do you manage that? Do you go to the film people and say, I'm a film editor and here's this website? Or do you put it all together? Do you try and tell people, oh, I do multiple things? Like,
yeah, it's really challenging. And I've had loads of different advice from people because it's something I think people struggle with. So I've had one set of advice, which is you absolutely have to be clear, like nobody cares. Nobody who wants a film cares that I, fart around with books, essentially. Like they don't care. So on that level, I think your shop front, like your offer needs to be clear, and it needs to be obvious what service, if it's a service, you're offering. But I don't think that means that you can't do all the things. I think it just means you just have to think about how it's marketed. And also just going back to something you said, I mean, it is important to keep doing it and building up your skill set and getting those things in place. But really, really important to find the people who are doing it the way you want to do it. And then to kind of, like sometimes, for instance, that advice that was given to me, I was kind of like, oh, I don't want that advice. Like that advice makes my life harder. It makes me feel like I'm not doing it right. All of this stuff. But in fact, those things, the people who kind of cut you down a little bit, and I don't mean that, I don't mean in a negative way, I mean in a constructive criticism way, because I, you know, when I went to art school, that's what we had. It was literally called a crit, and you would put your work up and then everybody would tell you what they thought, and not in a, oh, well, that's really crap way. They would say, well, I think this is successful, but this, you know, it's like that, you know, in primary school, did you have like what is it called? A star and two wishes or something, like something excellent, but something you would like to improve, you know? So I think it's really great to have people say, oh, well done, you're amazing. But it's even better to have people say, that's not working, and here's an idea of how to work out how to make it work. I think that's really valuable. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
No, I think it does. I think it does. I want to also talk about your experience because I think it's like quite obviously things are changing with, I'm talking about women's roles in the world, etc. And I think obviously like statistically more women are having children later or not having children at all and all of that. But I feel like we've definitely had conversations before about being a mum and also having your thing that you want to do and dealing with like basically like the judgment of it. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember you saying going to like a party or something and someone being like, oh, what do you do? And you're like, oh, well, I'm a mum and I do take some photos and like trying to, do you know what I mean? I just wanted to talk about that basically a bit and just hear about your experience a little and maybe just what you think is the best way to approach that kind of thing to try and, you know, have yourself be taken seriously in a world which is a bit not really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have worked, but I haven't worked. In fact, I had someone say to me recently, saw a job in a window. Oh, look, there's a job. I was kind of like, I have a job. Like, just because it doesn't look like, you know what I mean? It's like, no, I don't want that job. Like, what, just because, you know, I have one. But I am not in the position that some women are in, and in that, you know, they are definitely juggling way more. I was very privileged to, I don't know if it's privilege, I think it is privilege, privileged to have a good partner, and my partner and I decided that we would have less stuff and go on fewer holidays, and one of us was with the children because that's what we thought was important. Saying that, I think I got more into work maybe when the youngest was about 10. So, and that sort of accelerated from there. But I think foregoing all of that, where mine is much more flexible, and frankly, I couldn't do what I do now if I didn't have support from my partner. I mean, that's the truth of it. So I don't know where that puts me, you know, on the feminist scale, but whatever. It is what it is. But as far as taking yourself seriously, it's really, there's a really interesting thing that people do, and that I know I have done, where people will say, oh, what do you do? And I'll say, oh, I just have this little business on the side, you know, instead of being like, I run a business teaching bookbinding and making books. You know, I didn't even make that big a thing of it talking here, but the point is, you can diminish your own thing, and that gives people the cue of what they can think of it, I guess, if that makes sense. So I think my advice would be, make sure that you don't do that to yourself. You know, if you're doing a project, you're not doing a little project. You're not just doing something, you're doing it. It's what you're doing. So
Yeah.
That
And I,
what you mean?
yeah, no, that's exactly what I was like asking about. I think also, and I don't know if I've kind of asked this already, so if I have, we can just move on. But I was just thinking about also with the having multiple things going on, being a mum, being a partner, being an actual individual person in yourself as well, and also having multiple labels in your job where you're like, oh, I do this and I do a bit of this and I do a bit of this. um is it difficult to like self-identify sometimes as like, oh well, this is what I'm doing, or do you just feel like I'm all of these things and it's fine, you know? Because I I think there's definitely a thing of being like in society of being like, what's your thing,
Yeah,
like what's your one thing, tell us,
yeah,
and then it's like, well,
yeah.
that's it, you
No,
know?
I really struggle with that. And I think you're absolutely right, because for years, sort of think, it's like whisper, I'm an artist, ugh, ew, I can't say that. And also it gets a bit like, I don't know how else to phrase it. It sort of gets up its own bum, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be that person. I'm just a person who makes things. I like creative things. I like education. I like, I don't know. I'm still clearly not good at it. When that thing about the elevator pitch, I would just waffle on. Like, it would have to be a very, very, very tall building for me to stop talking, because I don't know what it is. And I think maybe there's an issue with that, because the other thing is, like, I had a year interrupted, like before the pandemic. My last class was on the 11th of March. I had loads of other classes planned. But I think in the way that when people identify solely with their work, if their work is gone, it's problematic. Whereas I don't really have that, because I'm just, swimming around in my sea of who knows what I'm doing. And that's my normal feeling. My normal feeling is having to adapt and shift and change. And I think that's, as being creative, and I think it's a real problem actually, that the focus on STEM subjects is in opposition to creative subjects, because actually I'm a science wannabe. That's why I'm so Charles Darwin. I think it's all creative, and I think foregrounding the adaptability of creative work is really, really important. And it's just a good life skill. Like, if you don't have that life skill, you're gonna struggle more, I think. So
No, definitely. And I feel like, sorry, this kind of segues onto talking about, and it doesn't have to get very political or anything, but I've asked most of the people that we've had on with events where I've been hosting, and I've got an opportunity to ask them a bit about this, with obviously the government's stance on the arts and funding for these things, and as you said, like trying to shape your work so that you can get funding from organizations, because that's how you get to make the work sometimes, and if you don't have the money yourself to do it, how would you, I guess, what would be like, do you have any words of encouragement for like people, younger people right now? Obviously we're watching this happening and thinking like no one really cares about this thing, do you know what I mean? So I just, not no one cares about it, but you get what I'm saying, that there's not a lot of support, so it can be a bit disheartening, I think, if you're looking forward at a career thinking this is really what I want to do, but how can I even, where do I get the funding, and how do I whatever. So I guess I'm asking, like, what would be your
yeah,
advice or encouragement?
I'm
Or
afraid I have never been great with funding. And I know people, who are, and but it's a whole other job, essentially. I know of friends in the arts who that is their job, is to get funding for people. That's how it works. So I'm in a very privileged position. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. And I don't want to, even when I got the Arts Council funding for Walkswell Medway, there was some engagement, but to take it any further, the types of engagement which are worthy, you know, 100%, it's government, you know, it's our money. So yes, it should be benefiting society 100%, because I think the arts do that. So there has to be some criteria, but I think there's a case of not every pot will fit every person. And then what happens is the pot starts forming the work. And then that, I don't know how that is. I don't know what I think of it. So I'm afraid I can't be encouraging. It's not really my area.
No, that's
or also maybe, I mean, historically looking at people who've just done stuff, you know, just like forged their own way. I mean, what was it I saw? Recently, watching Broad City, you know, they just started on YouTube. Good on them.
Yeah.
They're amazing, you know. I mean, maybe they got lucky in that Amy Poehler saw them. I don't know. But,
yeah,
you know, to get lucky, you got to be doing something. And to be seen, you have to be doing something to see. So you have to just, you know, get out there and run around like a lunatic, and, you know, which, I don't know if that's inappropriate, isn't it? But you know what I mean? You just have to like get into it.
Yeah, you just have to do
stuck in and do what you think you should, really.
Yeah. I guess I can ask one more question. So just thinking about like taking inspiration for all of these different parts of your, you know, let's call it a career, because that's what it is. All these different parts of you. Where have you taken inspiration? I mean, there must be so many places, but is there anything, you know, like what's drawn you so much to books, and what's drawn you so much to, do you get what I'm saying? Like what drives you to focus on these things when there are so many options, you know?
Well, I think what is really interesting is that there's always a worry that there won't ever be another thing. Like, you know, because I've described those projects, there are others, but and once I get into them, I'm 100% in it and engaged. And then what is really interesting about finding a topic, if it makes you ask another question. So for instance, when I was talking about the bivariate map, I started with the origin of species. I started with words from, and I'm not a religious person, so you know, I was just interested in the text and the actual book, and the contemporary nature of those two books. So it was only because I thought, well, how can I question this? That sort of this, it's almost scientific method, but it isn't, of, you know, every question should have another question. And that's, if it doesn't keep having questions, then it kind of drops and isn't as interesting. So I think that is probably it. That's the, you know, the inquiry. And also, when we're saying like worrying about it, they're never having another. So I have this mental image of ideas. So I will have, you know, a little idea, and this is literally how I think of it. I'll have a little idea and I'll be like, well, I don't know where that fits. So I just kind of, I put it in a little bubble and I put it out on a string, and then they're all just floating around above me. And then something will happen, you know, over here in left field, my left field. And then I'll think, oh, that goes with that. So then I just pull that little bubble down, and then that becomes something. So you just never know which things, like I was saying about that friend who, you know, I said, oh, put up 10 of your pictures, you know, for 10 days. And now he's painting full time. So you literally never know which things, but also I'm never not curious. I mean, this is the part where I get to say I'm your mom. Like every time anyone came home and said, oh, I heard such and such, I'm like, oh, right, where's the evidence? Who said that? What's their motivation? Why would they say it? What do they have to gain from it? You know, I'm constantly asking those questions. And I think probably, yeah, it's just like, I like solving problems. You know, if something's a little bit off, I'll try and straighten it up. Or if it's, you know, too straight. I'll try and mess it up.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think definitely from all the pieces that you've like shown in the PowerPoint today as well, there's definitely like such like a, I don't know if like analytical is the right word, but to all your pieces, and same with like bookbinding, it's all very precise, and like it's about what the words matching the words, and it's about the exact, because I know from, you know, knowing you with the bookbinding, it's like everything is perfectly in place and everything. So I think I find that quite interesting, that there's like there's like definitely some sort of analytical, like mathematic almost like side to it, which I think maybe people who, some people wouldn't associate with like a creative career. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But they actually do really intertwine and like make sense together.
Mm-hmm. Also, I was looking really hard and I couldn't find it, but there's a contemporary of, there's a sort of New York school around the Lucy Lepard wrote a book called 6 Years, the dematerialization of the art, you know, whatever, of art. And that group of artists, there's one artist who said that he just makes work, and if other people can see links between them afterwards, then that's fine. And you can even do that with your own work, which is what, for me, when I think about being at books or being at filmmaking, you know, when I was 22 and 21, I was really interested in filmmaking, but there wasn't any facility or avenue for me to do that. So 25 years later, I did it. And with the books, I was making books 30 years ago, like pre-internet. I was literally ripping books apart to see how they were put together and making my own terrible books. And yet I'm doing that again now. So, and all the work in between is kind of books and, you know, either pages or parts or folios of things, or have a book attached to them or something. So, and it's not in a fatalistic way that things lead, but you know, if you've got threads, if the life is a thread, then it's all going to be there. Whether you want to look at it or not is another interesting, but that's why I was saying thank you for this opportunity, because it's really a nice thing to pull the thread and have a look at it.
And I guess like in that way as well, everything is useful, you know, like the fact that you were making those, like ripping up the things and making terrible books from your perspective now relates relates to you then getting into making, you know, like actually doing bookbinding, which I think makes me think of how, again, in society's outlook of what a job is and what it is to be productive and all of these things, like I for example with Walk Swell Medway, the walking project that you did, that is not like a traditional idea of like work, but it did lead to, do you know what I mean, like going, I'm going to go on a walk every day, you know, most people wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that's how you're gonna, you know, that's your job, you're going and then you're doing this big long walk and staying at people's houses, you know what I mean, but that is work, right? So
yeah, I mean, there's a tradition of walking, you know, other obviously fabulous artists walking, so it's not, I didn't make it up, but that was the good thing also about doing a master's, is that you kind of think, and you all might find this in particular, I know with your writing, Edie, like what happens is you think you've come up with something like brand new and amazing, and then you do a little research and you're like, oh my god, it's been done. But and that used to really bug me, but now I just think, it just means I'm on the right track, you know. And you could, and as an artist, like learning to paint and draw, I can go and sit in a gallery and try to make a copy, but you know, and that's a traditional way of honing your skills in drawing and painting, is to copy, you know, an existing piece of work. it's never ever going to be the original piece of work. It's always going to have your accent, your flavor in it. So even if you were to, well, I mean, what is fan fiction? No, I'm not saying you're going to write some fan fiction, but you know, fan fiction isn't, what's that vampire one? You know, the one.
Twilight.
Yeah, Twilight. That's fans fiction of 50 Shades, or is 50 Shades, I don't know which way it goes.
Yeah.
But you know, one of them is fan fiction of the other one, which is, they're completely different things. And I'm not putting those up as, you know, the pinnacle of literary excellence. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying they're not, but the point is, you can try and copy somebody as much as you want, and you're still not going to, because you're always going to do it your own way.
Yeah.
Which, you know, lots of artists play with anyway, where they're just they're actually making a copy, and then, you know, everyone gets their knickers in a twist. And
yeah.
so.
I have one more question that I'm going to ask, which is basically, I was just thinking about the fact that about funding, arts funding, and about art institutions, and that whole way of navigating the creative industry, let's say, of that thing. And I've read a lot about, you know, like institutional critique, and about challenging who gets to say what is good enough art to get funding. Do you know what I mean? Like, who gets to say, oh, well, this thing will fit in our gallery, so we're going to let them have the funding, and oh, that other person, it's not quite the right flavor, or maybe it's a bit too challenging on this subject, or a bit too whatever on that subject. I guess I just wanted to say, just to talk about that, and just think about when you've had to, perhaps, have you felt you've ever had to really adapt a piece where you had the idea for it, and then you were like, oh, but I need to get the funding, or I need to whatever, like, or do you just decide, okay, I don't think this is going to be like marketable to someone who's going to pay commission, so I've got to find a different way to do this? Like, is there quite a lot of that juggling and figuring it out when you're
again, I haven't done a lot of that. I haven't actively sought it out. I've been open to stuff. So for instance, with the Walkswell Medway, I can't remember how the connection happened, but the exhibition at University of Kent was, like I said, it was in connection with a musical piece, which was about the Tokaido Road in Japan, and it was about Hiroshiga's paintings, and which were quite, is prosaic the word, when they're just like around the neighborhood, you know what I mean? They're very like everyday imagery, which was really unusual, and kind of fit with my kinds of pictures, which were also, you know, pictures of milk bottles on steps and all kinds of the sort of quotidian, I love that word, that, you know, the everyday stuff that if you're like me, actually, I was thinking about this the other day, just on a little tangent, where I don't know what it was, whether you had to think about yourself in the way that you were or something. And I can remember being about 14 and being in a car and going under a tree, and the tree leaf was low, so it was in the eye line, in the windscreen. And I knew that the glass was there, and I still reached out to try and touch this leaf. And I remember, and I got laughed at by my stepbrother, who thought it was the funniest thing ever. Why was I telling you that? Wait, what were we talking about? This is what I'm like. You just get distracted. Oh yeah, so the everyday, that thing of having this fascination of the everyday that takes you away. So that was that just seemed to fit. And I think kind of I've only ever engaged with things that way. You know, I'll have a conversation, if it seems to fit and it works, then it happens. So I can't speak to getting that funding and you know, because I haven't engaged with it. I find it too intimidating. And also I'm just a bit lazy. I don't want to do all the paperwork. And I did try it once, and maybe to my detriment, I was turned down. So I probably could have pursued what else I could have done, but I didn't really want to do it that much, to be honest.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, it's not the part of being like a creative person or an artist or a photographer that you straight away think of, oh, I can't wait to do loads of admin about getting some funding.
Yeah.
Like, yay.
But unfortunately, I mean, I think that's the thing. That's the part where maybe that's taught more now. But when I was never ever taught about the business of art.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to get into creative work, you have to be good at business, or you have to have the resource, or luck out with somebody who does have it and wants to be doing it, and will, because there's a lot of, when you starting out, quid pro quo. Like I would have things. I did a couple of films where the organizations just didn't have a lot of funding, but I really wanted to do the project. So, whatever they had, I said, right, what do you have? I'll take that. And then what did happen, which I guess maybe addresses what you're talking about, what did happen later on was I said, here's what it should cost. And we made the work. And then when they applied for funding for their project, which was actually a performance project, theatre project, they applied for an appropriate level of funding to pay me properly. So I guess that's probably how I've gotten around it, where I said, right, I'll take your 200 quid or whatever it is. But when you get the right funding, remember that happened. It doesn't always pay off, to be fair. You have to, there's a real relationship of trust in that situation. But it is helpful to align yourself with people who are, have maybe are going in a similar direction. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think in general, sorry, just to go off of that, like it kind of goes with any job you go for, not even just in the arts. Like I'm just finishing my master's, so I'm looking for any kind of job I can get. And it's really a case of looking at the job application, and then you edit your CV to fit what they want. You edit your cover letter to fit what they want. So I think when you're going for funding, even if you're not really thinking about it, you will kind of edit your own words to fit what they're looking for, to kind of, and then make it your own at the same time. So say, well, you're looking for this, I can do something similar. Or I can't do that, but I can give you this, which you don't know that you want. You didn't know you wanted that, so I'm going to tell you that you want it. So I just think in like general, when you're looking for jobs or funding or whatever, you kind of automatically present yourself as what they want.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a kind of, I don't know if it's appropriate to call it this, because I know it has different contextual meanings, but it's that thing where we all code switch a little bit, where when you're in a different situation, like I know when I'm with certain friends, I'm one way. When I'm with other friends, I'm another way. When I'm in a professional situation, I'll be a different way. And I guess, it is unfortunate that it has to be done when you're talking about other situations, when you're talking about like people of color having to code switch, it's a bad extreme of it. But I think we all kind of do it. So exactly what you're saying, Laura, is I think you're right about that.
Yeah, so like I'm a completely different person with my parents than I am with my friends. I wouldn't talk to my parents about what I talk with my friends about. But yeah, I see what you mean by like there are extremes to it, but I think everybody somewhat unknowingly does it anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I think even knowingly, I think we know we're doing it. And actually it's kind of an important skill, to have that social, like a social filter. I guess it could be an issue when it feels difficult and stifling. There's probably because being American and coming here, it sounds really silly, but the way that I speak is definitely, when I go back to America, which I haven't for a long time, I sound really odd to people, but it's because I'm trying to assimilate, trying to fit in.
Yeah, exactly, because you want to also, it's like about making people comfortable, isn't it? You just want to welcome whatever the situation, you want to match someone, mirror them a bit, perform on what they are wanting you to perform on.
Yeah, I think it's actually like on a human sort of primate level, we all try to do that anyway, don't we?
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yes. I think we're about time now, so I'm gonna wrap this up, but thank you so much, Hope, for coming and thank you for all of your insight. Really appreciate it and appreciate your time.
No, I hope it was useful. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, thanks so much. We're gonna go now.